Today on Locked On Rockies, it's your annual reminder that Todd Helton is a Hall of Famer.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 24th day of November in the year 2023. I'm your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, guess what? You're in the right spot, because that's what we do around here is talk Rockies baseball here on your favorite streaming services and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where you can be part of the show by subscribing, leaving a comment, and hey, if you really want to help, like the video too as well. Tell all your Rockies friends to tune in. The subscriptions and likes on the video, easiest way to help the show grow. So if you do that, you're helping me out. Really do appreciate it. And I thank you again for making us your first listen of the day. We're free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, like I mentioned. Hey, we're going to talk Todd Helton today. We were thinking about maybe some player reviews, something like that, but the ballots are out. The discourse has already started. And then there was a great thread on Twitter, X, whatever you're calling it these days, that I want to go through, because it basically just highlights everything. And then I want to bring up a conversation that real people, that real deal fans will have heard this before, because it's not a new argument from me in terms of this conversation, but it's worth bringing up again. And the thread highlights this as well. It's this idea of, for some people, Coors Field is a bigger deal than steroid use. And I've been on the record of saying, if you use steroids and you were still an elite ball player, you still deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, because of really just the nature of the game at that point. But I think the steroids part of not only Todd Helton's career, someone who played clean throughout the steroid era, and not only played, but thrived and succeeded during this the steroid era as a player who wasn't juicing, or at least I guess not ping for juicing, but I didn't see it. I didn't hear too much of it. But anyway, why this narrative of Coors Field just looms so large over Rockies players. And actually, really, after this one, the gap between the next Rockies player elected might be pretty long when it's all said and done. Maybe players with Rockies ties, but not necessarily Rockies-focused players. We're diving into all of that today on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we dive into everything today, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. Visit FanDuel.com/locked-on to get started. And we're going to get started by highlighting the resume of Todd Helton and baseball quotes on X. At Baseball Quotes 1 has an incredible thread, all highlighting the career accomplishments of Todd Helton. So we're going to go through this thread here, and I'm going to give my 2 cents on some of these stats as well. So let's start here. Todd Helton has the 18th highest OPS in MLB history, with a minimum of 5,000 plate appearances. The 17 players above him include 13 Hall of Famers, 3 alleged steroid users, and Mike Trout. Players to have or to meet or exceed Helton's career slash line of 316, 414, and 539. Stan Musial, Babe Ruth, Jimmy Fox, Ted Williams, Rogers Hornsby, and Lou Gehrig. Of the 20 men to play at least 2,000 games at first base, Helton ranks 8th in terms of WAR. The 7 ahead of him include 5 Hall of Famers, Albert Pujols, and 1 alleged steroid user. Todd Helton is the only player in Major League Baseball history to record 100 or more extra base hits in consecutive seasons, hit 35 or more doubles in 10 consecutive seasons, record a 200 hit, 40 home run, 100 RBI, 100 run, 100 extra base hit, and 100 walk season in the NL. And here's a nice one, too, for all the people yelling Coors at all of that. Often slandered, again, we're reading a thread from Baseball Quotes at Baseball Quotes 1 on X. Often slandered because of the Coors effect, Helton produced an .855 OPS away from Coors Field. That's the same career OPS as Hall of Famers Al Kaline and Scott Rowland, and higher than the career OPS of Reggie Jackson, Carl Yastrzemski, Eddie Murray, Ernie Banks, and Dave Winfield. And let's see here. Let's see. His OPS plus of 133 is higher than Hall of Famers Tony Gwynn, Roberto Clemente, Ricky Henderson, Kirby Puckett, Paul Molitor, Derek Jeter. During his playing career, which lasted during the steroid era from 1997 to 2013, Helton produced the most doubles, second most runs created, third most extra base hits, fifth most walks, sixth most hits, sixth highest OBP, seventh highest batting average, eighth most RBI, ninth highest OPS, 10th highest WAR. If you can sit there and read all of that, hear those stats, see where Todd Helton ranks, and then to cross your arms and just go, Coors Field. It's lazy. And I think this is the year. I think for sure, I mean, the trends and everything suggests that Todd Helton will be in the Hall of Fame. But it still had to fight tooth and nail, and there's still so much discourse of Todd Helton's average, Todd Helton's okay, the Rockies did a lot of losing. You can say whatever you want, but listen to those names. Listen to where he ranks all time. Listen to the fact that he has done things that no other baseball player has ever done. And he joins lists of baseball players that do very small, that have done rare things. He is a rare baseball player. He is a one-of-a-kind, unique baseball player that excelled in an era where people were doing anything possible to get an advantage. And he thrived. He gets dinged for the later stages of his career because of the back injuries and the inconsistency to stay healthy. It doesn't matter. He still played 17 seasons, and he still has that career line. When your name is being associated with the greats of baseball, the people from way back in the day, the people that dominated the game in the early eras of baseball, that means that you are doing something during your generation that no one else is doing. And that's what Todd Helton did, all while being part of a team that struggled. And then when he needed to step up for his team, when they actually did give him a chance in the playoffs, he succeeded. Todd Helton is, that maybe you ding the off the field stuff. He's definitely not a perfect person. He's definitely not a person without, a couple of skeletons in the closet, like we all know. But when you're being compared to the greatest names in baseball, and you look at the actual numbers and you add in park adjustment, road stats, and everything, there's no argument, truly. And that doesn't, and I know, and that doesn't even really factor in that much of the fact that he was an elite defensive first baseman. And I know that's not a big flashy thing. That's fine, but it's still a huge part of his game. Todd Helton was one of the best defensive first basemen. Todd Helton was one of the best first basemen, and for a bit, could be argued, was one of the best first basemen in the game. The dude should have won an MVP. He should have. I mean, there's arguments to be made, and there's a history of Rockies players not getting their flowers when they deserve. But a 200 hit, 40 home run, 100 RBI, 100 run, and 100 extra base hit, and 100 walk season. Could you imagine someone doing that now, especially for the Rockies? Oh my goodness. We'd be foaming at the mouth. 35 or more doubles in 10 consecutive seasons. That's over half of his career. He hit at least 35 doubles. He might be one of the best doubles hitters of all time. So for people, when they're really looking at this, And when they're looking at their analysis, and when they're looking at players that might be borderline, like Todd Helton has been, are you blinded by this notion and this idea that steroids don't play as big of a role as Coors Field? Because if you think Coors Field is the immediate negate to anything, and you're willing to let steroids slide, I got beef with that. Let's talk about that coming up in segment number 2 here on today's episode of Locked on Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about our friends at FanDuel. FanDuel's got you covered all football season long because FanDuel is America's #1 sports book. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. So if you are riding high on those Broncos, maybe you're believing big in some of the, maybe the Nuggets, maybe the Avalanche, maybe your favorite team that isn't the Colorado Rockies, you can check it all out and all the betting action at FanDuel. There's no better time to get in on the action. The app is super easy to use. There's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over, unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. Reminder, FanDuel.com/lockedon for that deal. This is the Locked on Rockies podcast, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast, right here on your favorite streaming service, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked on Rockies YouTube channel as well, where your subscription helps the show. Same with liking the video and telling all your friends to check us out. If you need more sports coverage, like, say, 24/7 sports coverage, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. We're talking Todd Helton today. We're talking Todd Helton legacy. We're talking Hall of Fame. And we highlighted this incredible thread of mind-boggling stats from baseball quotes that he brought up with Todd Helton. And we ran through all of them. But again, just a reminder that Todd Helton's stat career /line is only met or exceeded by Stan Musial, Babe Ruth, Jimmy Fox, Ted Williams, Rogers Hornby, and Lou Gehrig. Yeah, we'll keep dropping back in some of the nuggets here from this thread throughout the rest of the show here, because I want to spend the next time here bringing up something I've talked about in the past and something that I think is, again, a really important thing to put in the minds of the baseball narrative people, the people that like listening to storylines, the people that want to take the things into consideration. If you hold Coors Field against the Rockies and Rockies players and elite Rockies players like Todd Helton, Hall of Fame caliber players like Todd Helton, then you can't be pro steroid guys. You just can't be. I really don't think you can sit there and say, hey, Barry Bonds and McGuire and Sosa, they're in no matter, because they were excellent. They were great, even with the steroids. But then to turn your nose, to scoff at Todd Helton and to point at and use Coors Field as a reason for him not to be in the Hall of Fame, then your analysis is flawed. In my eyes, there's nothing about Coors Field that provided a bigger benefit and advantage to players than the ones that did steroids. I mean, I would argue the ones doing steroids had a more unfair advantage in more games than the Rockies did playing at Coors Field. You still have to deal with the elements. You still have to deal with a whole variety of things versus genetically making yourself better and able to handle every situation that you find yourself in when it comes to playing ball. And it's just so it's just another thing, and it just rehashes when the Todd Helton and the Rocky and this happened with Larry Walker, and it'll happen when any Rockies player is going into the Hall of Fame. Matt Holliday is going to be an interesting case. We'll be curious to see how that pans out. But again, it's just trying to deal with lazy narratives about the Rockies and only leaning on Coors Field. Because it's immediate. Coors Field gotta negate the Rockies' success, negate Rockies' greatness. But they ignore this again from baseball quotes. 855 OPS away from Coors Field. That's the same career OPS as Hall of Famers Al Kaline and Scott Rowland, and higher than the career OPSs of Reggie Jackson, Carl Yastrzemski, Eddie Murray, Ernie Banks, and Dave Winfield. And that's just his road OPS, mind you. So that is on par and better than some Hall of Famers already. And that's just, it simply highlights how lazy the Coors Field narrative gets. Highlights how bad of a take it is. Is it a factor? Yes, certainly. But they're able to adjust, and they've done park adjusted stats, and they've done all of the extra steps and miles that you need to be convinced of Rocky's greatness. They all exist. It's just up to you to actually sit there and absorb it and say, wow, you can actually play good baseball at Coors Field. And it's not just because you're able to hit the ball further. It's actually because you're an incredibly talented and one of the best players to ever do it, which is Todd Helton. His WAR is one of the best. His stats are amongst the best. He is one of the best players. He deserves to be in the Hall of Fame and recognized as one of the greatest players of all time, and to be recognized as one of the greatest Rockies of all time. Say what you will about the Rockies, have your opinions about the Rockies, laugh at the Rockies, doubt the Rockies, whatever. It's all been earned, certainly. But if you're not if you're not able to actually analyze and look at the things and look at the numbers and look at the production of Todd Helton and see how good he was, then your analysis is flawed. Then the way you look at the game is flawed. I'm sorry. When you point to Todd Helton, the numbers simply don't lie. Even with injury impacted career, the guy almost played for 20 years. And he did so at a difficult place to play. And performed in seasons and with teams that were terrible. Every argument that you have that to take away from Todd Helton outside of injuries and lack of a championship can be countered. But again, if championships are the only reason that people are getting in the Hall of Fame, or that's the ultimate deal breaker for you, then you miss out on some of the greatest players to ever play. If a championship is something you use to gatekeep your personal Hall of Fame, then you're keeping out some of the best players, and you're rewarding lucky players. You're rewarding players that maybe just happen to be in the right situation in the right time and got hot at the right moment, but not an overall product of 17 years of some of the best baseball ever produced. With everybody that's played baseball, if you rank in the top 10, top 20, 18th highest OPS in MLB history. He's 8th in WAR for first baseman. 8th. If you are a top 10 in WAR of all time at your position, you are one of the greatest to ever do it. Period. Full stop. Plain and simple. And when the only people above you are 5 Hall of Famers and a steroid user and a soon-to-be Hall of Famer and Albert Pujols, so 6 out of the 7 people above him are Hall of Famers, I don't know what to tell you. That's elite. Top 10 first baseman of all time. The argument's there. I'm not saying he's the greatest. I'm not saying he's number 1. I'm saying top 10. And if you are top 10 in your position, you deserve a spot in the Hall. Especially on top of the fact that he did this and he's done and he did all of this Well, everyone was juicing. He was doing it the old natural way. He was actually performing at an elite level without the need to do that. And on a team that did a lot of losing. I just don't know how you don't sit and look at Todd Helton's resume and not be blown away. Not just sit there and say, it's a no-doubter for me. It's no doubt about it. He's a Hall of Famer. And one thing too, and I think this goes for a lot of players, and I think the Joe Mauers of the world should get this too. Your loyalty should be a factor and should be rewarded in some ways, more than just the team itself doing it. Because I think for baseball, when you get people that commit that long term, like Todd Helton did, and not want to force his way out and continue to be a member of the Rockies and try to help that team win, that should be rewarded. Let's talk about that coming up here in segment number 3. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast for free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. And if your team is the Colorado Rockies, you are in the right spot, because that's what we do around here, is talk Rockies baseball. Folks, we've been talking about Todd Helton today, and we're going to finish up our conversation on that. But before we do, make sure you guys are checking out that Locked On Sports Today YouTube channel, the first 24/7 nonstop YouTube channel here. So go subscribe. First ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel, Locked On Sports Today, in your YouTube feeds. Go check it out. You don't want to miss it. You might see my mug pop up from time to time there as well. All right, folks. Want to put a bow on our conversation about Todd Helton. And it comes down to, I really do think loyalty matters. I think for the Rockies to have someone like Todd Helton is incredibly important. I think to have people that really care, that really want to. And yeah, the money might have been best offered from Todd or from the Rockies at some point, yada yada. But for someone to actively commit and want to be and stay with a team through 17 years of ups and downs, that matters. It matters to the fans. It matters to the game. It matters to baseball as a whole. You have to have people that are able to succeed and thrive and do great things on not so great teams. And his loyalty to the Rockies and loyalty to the game of baseball should be rewarded by being enshrined with the best players in the game. He didn't have to stay in Colorado the whole time. He certainly could have forced his way out. He could have demanded a trade. He could have done a matter of things. But instead, for 17 years, Rockies fans were treated to one of the best first basemen to ever play the game. Only to once again to be, thrown with doubt and disclaimers and asterisks and such, all because of where the Rockies have to play their home games. What's the most exhausting part of the Larry Walker conversation, the Todd Helton conversation, and every other conversation about the Hall of Fame going forward when it revolves the Rockies is the Coors Field conversation. Because I've certainly been watching a lot of Rockies baseball the last couple of years, and Coors Field ain't fixing all the problems for offense there. You have to be great to do what Todd Helton did. You have to be incredible to do what Todd Helton did. That's what there's just simply no way to look at the numbers. Look at 17 years of performance and negate it all because he played in Colorado. It's good for the game when great and elite players stick with teams like the Rockies. Choose to believe in and go with the Rockies. It helps make things less boring. It helps makes things more it helps make things more engaging and exciting for the fans. And it adds depth to the league. All in all, I just think that just because they're the Rockies doesn't mean that they weren't great. And just because Todd Helton played for the Rockies doesn't mean that he wasn't great. And I really have no good. I can't even be open-minded to allow someone to say that Todd Helton doesn't deserve it. So hopefully the writers out there see the numbers, see the stats, and we finally get Todd over the finish line there and get the second Rockies player inducted into the Hall of Fame. We'll have to see. We'll have to wait as the voting season just started. So this will be something we'll keep our eyes on for a bit. But if the trends hold, if everything looks like it did last year and such, there's a good chance the Rockies have a second representative there in the Hall of Fame. More than deserving is Todd Helton. Let me know what you think about Todd Helton. Do you think he should be a Hall of Famer? Do you think he's got the stuff to make it into the Hall with the bests of the best? Let me know in the comments. Let me know what you think. And folks, have a wonderful weekend, because that is going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Rockies. You can find us on your favorite streaming service. You can find us on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where your subscription and liking the videos really, really helps the show, really helps me out. Really do appreciate it. And so if you want to help the show out, why don't you check that out? And if you're looking for your second listen of the day, Locked On MLB, or if you need more Colorado sports coverage, Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, Locked On Nuggets, and Locked On Buffs have you covered. Folks, until next time, this is Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.